We all experience challenging and difficult situations in life. In the face of these complexities, it is not always clear how to respond, what to do, or what to avoid. It's easy to get stuck in these moments and stop moving forward in life. Wholeness with Naomi is a program that explores our experiences with such encounters and provides tools and strategies that can enable anyone facing these hardships to continue walking their path in life. We can't wait to meet you on this journey. Tune in, your life is about to change for the better. Welcome to our program, Wholeness with Naomi, where we talk about different and sometimes difficult situations that we may find ourselves in. More importantly, we talk about the tools that you can use to be able to navigate in these different and difficult paths. Of late, we've been hearing a lot about road traffic accidents. Life is lost. And this is something which is quite tragic, you know. These are people that we love. These are people that belong to families. And when they are gone, you know, there's nothing that can replace them. Today on the program, we're going to be sharing about this with Mr. Joshua Kumunda. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you very much, Naomi, for having me today.
This is a personal life experience of something that you've encountered in your own life. What happened?
Well, Naomi, it's a very difficult thing to talk about. It's only now, after 3 and some months, years of having experienced this event in my life, that I can now come out and start talking about it. But also just for me, this is part of my healing journey, just being able to talk about it, because when you look back at what happened and the threat to life through a road traffic accident, it's something that comes unplanned, something that you don't anticipate. And so most often when it happens, it's something that shocks you. Where still for me, it happened when I was in a foreign country. And so I'm grateful that you've given me this opportunity to speak to people that have gone through the same experience that I've gone through.
This is something that you said happened about more than 3 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's only now that you're able to open up about it.
Yeah.
That says a lot about the impact that it has on someone.
It does, especially the trauma that comes with it. It's something that you have to process, and if you don't process it well, it has long-lasting effects.
You know, as you're just sharing, I'm keen to know what really happened. You indicated that you were in a foreign land, your day had started normally, you were going about your activities, and life was as normal. And then this tragic hits. What actually happened?
We were working in a place, in a very remote village in a country in Southern Africa. Had provided water wells for the people within that community. And when we were coming back from that assessment, just wanting to know how we could help them further, we then were on the road for about 20 minutes into our drive, and I fell asleep because I really was exhausted. 2 girls on a bicycle crossed the road. Unexpectedly, and everybody else in the car says, you know, we weren't traveling fast, but these ladies just got onto the road, and the driver tried as much as he could to avoid hitting the 2 schoolgirls, and he hit them. And all I had was the screeching sound of the tires. That's when I woke up, and I then had the impact. And then, from then our car started rolling over. It rolled over 4 times, and it was a car with a sunroof, and so the sunroof came off. My window was open, and I thank God that I had a seat belt, and so it restrained me in place. But I could see everything that was happening during that time. And like what people say, it's like time freezes. And everything starts to move in slow motion, and you don't think of anything else. I don't remember thinking of anything else. I'm a man of faith, and so for me it was like, God, I'm dying. But if there's any way you can save my life, please save my life.
So you remember yourself saying those words?
Those are the only things that I remember. I didn't think about my wife. I didn't think about my kids. I didn't think about anything else that seemed important to me before this accident. And within that moment of time, everything else that seemed to be important ceased its importance. All that I was faced with was the mortality, the fact that at any given time I would lose my life. And the second thing that I felt during that time, which was the most difficult thing to handle, was the helplessness. There was nothing I could do. Definitely nothing to save myself from that situation. The car was rolling, things were happening, there was virtually nothing I could do. And so that deep sense of helplessness. I'm one person who's really industrious. If I'm in a very difficult situation, I'll try to find solutions. I'll try to find ways of working around that situation. But right in this situation, I was incapacitated to do anything. All I could do was to be still and hope that it would end well. And I think that's where most of my trauma came from. So when finally the car landed on its roof, I then came out of that accident, and I was bleeding from my mouth and a bit from my nose, and my prayer was, this could be it. And so I moved out of the vehicle, crawled out of it, and because it was a school area, I saw people in that culture, in that country, they lie prostrate on the ground. When stuff happened, the girls were on the road. One had already passed on, sadly. And people were wailing, and they were lying on the ground on the road. And so when I walked out of the car,
that is what you saw.
I saw people filled on the road, and I just didn't know if we had. It was so traumatic, and I tried to move towards the girls, and part of me said, "Don't do that." I think that helped me even later on, because I didn't see the images that would have, stayed on my mind for a very long time. And so from then on, I then had to sit down, and people came and then took us to a hospital, where we then were flown out of that area to the capital city, where we then got help. But during that time, the doctors were telling me, we don't know whether you're going to make it or not. You might have had some, bleeding in the brain and all of that. And so they did all that check. So there was about 3 days of waiting, not knowing the amount of damage that has happened to me. And those also were very traumatic.
What was going on in your mind in that time?
I think for me at that time was why.
Okay.
You're asking yourself why. Why did this happen? You're also asking yourself, and sometimes blaming yourself, to say, had I not come to this village at such a point in time, this would not have happened. The biggest thing, obviously, in that sense was, will I make it out of the situation alive?
That is quite deep and difficult. From your sharing, just having one person pass on in that accident, that image of those young girls in the road, and the car rolling, that is quite traumatic.
Yeah, it was. But obviously, another thing that obviously happened afterwards was that the other girl passed on 7 months after. So she was bedridden for 7 months. And that feeling also of thinking every day after, the doctors came to me, cleared me and said things were okay and I was recovering. But knowing that someone else was in a bedridden state, she wasn't going to be able to walk for the rest of her life. She had lost all a movement in her body. All she had was her upper body, like from the neck upwards was what was working, but everything else had stopped working. So for 7 months she was bedridden, and finally she passed on after 7 months. But you can understand, just holding that person in prayer, thinking about that person, it was something that I carried on for all that time, because I was there, I saw it happen, I was part of the team.
Yeah, that's quite deep. That's quite deep, and it's really quite a traumatic experience. Shiwas, let's take a short break. Join me in the next segment. Thank you.
Welcome back, viewers, to our program, Wholeness with Naomi. Before we went on a short break, Mr. Joshua Kumunda was sharing with us a traumatic experience that he had to go through where he was involved in an accident. And that accident also involved the loss of life of young children that were there. I want to understand, Mr. Joshua, how did this impact your life?
I think the first thing that was there, obviously, was the understanding that we don't need to take life for granted. We are living, so some say, on borrowed time. We are stewards of the time that we have, that God has given us. And so whatever we have, whatever time we have, we've got to account for it, have an impact in life, because you're not assured of tomorrow. So that was the first thing that really just came to mind.
Okay. So it put you in a point of reflection.
Deep reflection. This is way after this had happened. But before that, for me, maybe one of the things that really just helped me was I also had a friend, a workmate, who had an accident prior to me having that accident, maybe a few years before me. So during my healing process, everybody else came and they tried to offer solace and help me to walk through the journey. And I'm truly grateful to everybody who tried during that time. But they just couldn't understand the pain that I was in. They couldn't understand the anxiety that I had. And sometimes the very low lows, probably close to depression, that I had during that time. But being able to speak to this brother of mine, he was able to share the trauma that he went through, how he would just wake up at night and scream, and his wife would help him to calm down. The same things I was facing, how he would look at food and not want to eat the food because he's gone through that trauma, how he didn't want to come to work and work because he's also gone through that. So when I started understanding that I'm not the only one who's gone through this, and there are those that have gone through it, that are feeling the same, that felt or maybe still feeling the same way I was feeling during that time, I was able to call him at any given time to say, this is how I'm feeling. Talk to me. Or just going and sitting with him, and we would say nothing to each other. But another thing that was also a big thing for me, I remember someone coming to me and saying, you know what, the problem that you have is that when you travel, you don't pray before you travel. You should have prayed. When you pray, all of these things don't happen when you pray. And so that helped me.
How did you take that?
That was a difficult thing. I think maybe comes down to theological understanding and the sovereignty of God in all things. Because some of these questions are the questions that I had. God, why did you allow me to come to this foreign country to do the work that I was doing, and then this happens while I'm doing what I was doing? And so those are questions that I already had concerning God, concerning my relationship with God, concerning how God allowed this to happen. And I think it's the old age question that people always have. That question that says, why does God allow suffering in this world? And before this accident, I had been on assignment to Cyclone Idai at some point. Okay. And I'd seen what had happened and the pain that people had and the questions that people had, but no answers to that. But for me, that was also a watershed point in my life where my faith was tested and where my faith grew after understanding the sovereignty of God and accepting.
What was your answer to that? Why does God allow some of these difficult situations, negative situations, traumatic experiences, even suffering to happen?
That's a very difficult question to answer now, especially for someone who's gone through that and someone who's actually going through that right now. I think it just borders on two things for me, actually. First is the sovereignty of God, that God is sovereign in all things and that all things work together for good for those that believe in Him and that are called according to His will, that God uses any and every circumstance to build you, to make you better. We may not see the full picture now, but that's where faith comes in to say, this is what has happened, and this could be something that I could learn from it. And for me, it then grew to be a movement that spans across Africa,
Okay.
that deals with issues that make people, understand these deep questions that they may have with God. And so something was born out of that is impacting people all over Africa concerning the incident that happened in my life during that time. But also the second thing would be the sinfulness of men and the sin nature that we have. But all of this actually brings in trauma to the people that are part of this thing. And so ultimately I learned that there's human cause, there's God's sovereignty. But if you're willing to look at the positives of any situation, you can find positives, even in the most difficult circumstances. And for someone who's watching right now, and you might be in a difficult condition, difficult circumstance, and you don't know what will come out of it, I want to urge you, even in the darkest place, to be looking for the positives. What good can come out of this situation? Because in any and in every situation,
There is that good.
there is that good. I mean, people have that proverb that with every dark cloud, there's a silver lining.
That's there.
So we got to be looking for that silver lining and asking ourselves and saying, believing that I can come out of this situation no matter what. There must be a way to come out of this situation.
Thank you so much for that sharing and encouragement. When we first started, you were talking about some of the psychological challenges that you faced. Are there some that you'd want to just also share on that you experienced as a result of the trauma that you went through?
It was like soon after, maybe for the first 3-4 months, if I would hear any loud noise, I would panic. So I had those panic attacks. If somewhere I was being driven by someone going somewhere, and they quickly step on the brakes, I would panic, because that motion would remind me of
What happened
Of what happened.
Viewers, let's take a short break. Do join me in the next segment. Thank you. Before we went on a short break, Mr. Joshua Kumunda was just sharing with us some of the coping mechanisms that he used from the trauma that he experienced. Please do continue.
So when I would have these panic attacks, one of the things that was really important was to ground myself, because I think when these triggers happened, they would subconsciously take you back to that place where you feel trapped within a rolling car, where you're seeing things happening, where you see blood and all of that. So what I had to do was to ground myself, to be aware of my surroundings.
Were you taught about this?
It's something that I had to learn through research, just, because when I was going through trauma, I like to read, I like to research, and I had to actually go on the internet and try to ask questions. How do you cope with this? Because I was very self-aware, and I knew that I wasn't operating normally. And so this helped me to understand. So I would think of about the things that I'm smelling.
That's good.
The things that I'm seeing, other things that I'm hearing, or actually physically touch the seat that I'm sitting on. That then helped me to quickly be grounded and know that I'm no longer in that situation where things were happening. And part of also what I also started doing was to open up a little bit to my wife and to start talking about this, and through reliving the experience, through retelling of what happened, it started helping me to cope with that. But one of the most difficult things were the flashbacks. So you'd have those flashbacks and see those images, and so for me, part of that for me was being conscious. When that would happen, I said I'm a man of faith. I would then go back to prayer and just talk to God about it. This is what I'm going through, and it's hard to deal with. And really, prayer grounded me during that time to understand that this has already happened. It wasn't my fault. I didn't cause this. In any sense, even if I had been there, I'd been the one that had, and I do know there are people out there who've had accidents, and probably it was human error, and people said to you it was your fault. I think accidents, that's why we call them accidents, because no one goes out in the morning
yes.
and says, I'm going to cause an accident. No one goes out in the morning and say, I'm going to cause road carnage. Nobody does that. But it's something that happens. And so when it happens to you, the first is to accept that this has happened. Second thing for me is not to blame yourself.
But how do you stop that? Like, one of the things that also comes with the trauma is also that guilt. How can one differentiate that false guilt that may be coming to say, you know what, this was an accident. It happened as an accident.
I think there's a difference between taking responsibility over something that has happened and being guilty, overly guilty, and bashing yourself for something that you no longer have control over.
Okay.
So taking responsibility is saying, yes, this is what happened. I might not have been observant on the road. I might not have been fully giving attention to the vehicle that I was driving, and I was wrong. I should not have done this. That's taking responsibility, and you face the consequences for that. If there's any retribution, then you face that retribution. But you've got to move on from that point to accept that this has already happened. When guilt then overtakes your life, and you can't wake up in the morning, you can't be gainfully employed, you can't look forward to anything good, then that becomes detrimental. That's something that then needs attention, that needs proper attention. For me, I then spoke to people within my circles, little by little. My wife, like I said, my pastor, spoke to him a bit about it, and those that were willing to open. And I saw that as I spoke about it, it became something that became lighter to carry. The burden wasn't as heavy to carry as it was in the beginning. I walked out of that accident without major issues. But there could be other people that are watching this program that have gone through those very difficult experiences, difficult accidents, and they've been life transforming. They've lost their mobility, they've lost their ability to be gainfully employed. They are suffering a different set of issues on top of this trauma that they would have suffered. And so maybe someone else who's gone through that would be more qualified to speak to these people and help them to understand. Maybe getting an occupational therapist to come speak to them, to help them to be reintegrated into life again. That would be something that would be very important for them to do as they hope to start again, to build their life. Sometimes it's actually rebuilding that life.
That's true.
To find a new normal, to say this is what happened. I know of friends that had accidents and their whole lives changed because they were driving their car and they had an accident. Their wife, their children passed on in those accidents.
This is life changing.
This is life changing. They've got to find a new normal. Or people that had their whole families wiped out in an instant. And sometimes it leaves you financially. Also, you've got to look at the bills. You've got to look at all of that being part of your life. So it sometimes leaves you financially in a dire strait because you no longer are able to work. You also need to pay the hospital bills. You may need to do reparations for other people that are injured within that accident. And so this really does come with a whole lot of baggage and pain. That is why it is important for us to give, maybe as we even speak to people that are driving on the roads, just for them to be really careful. As much as it depends on you, it is important for you to prevent accidents on the road, as much as it depends on you. It's one of those things when we are reckless, when we are on the road and we are using the lane that we mustn't be using, or we are overtaking.
Your phone is something
I'm on my phone,
yeah.
and it's a message that you can later on look at after you've parked your car. I mean, someone says, let's meet at 2, and it's at 10 o'clock. And you're reading that message, and imagine you get into an accident, your car rolls over, you kill somebody, or something happens. It's a message you could have gone back to look at without any loss of life. And so just that is very, very important. People that drive, people that are in public transport, Don't do the third lane, don't do the second lane that you're not supposed to. Don't create it. It's only things that you start regretting over after the accident has already happened. And unfortunately, you can't go back and say, let's redo this. I'm going to put my phone back. Done. That is why it is very important for us to keep our roads with sanity, drive with sanity, preserve life. You don't want to be on the other side where you're thinking, I could have done better. I could have done this to prevent this.
Any last words, Mr. Joshua Kumunda, for our viewers?
I think I'll say that the life that you have is important. Make the most out of it. Love the people that you have around you. And finally, I think grow relationship with God. Walk with God.
Thank you so much for those words of encouragement, and also for allowing us to be able to walk through that journey of your life, which was also quite difficult to be able to share about it as well. Thank you for walking with us and also showing other people that, you know, I've gone through it. You can walk through it, you can walk out of it. It's hard, but you can walk out of it, and I am a living testimony of it. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Do continue in wholeness. Let's meet again in the next episode. Thank you.